Hello and welcome to Chaos to Clarity, the podcast that's your compass to navigate the exciting world of service-based businesses. If you're a determined woman in your current business adventure, striving to conquer the chaos and build your empire, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Maggie, your go-to business bestie and chaos navigator. I've spent nearly 2 decades in the service-based industry, building a photography business, a yoga studio, and now a thriving coaching practice. I've cracked the code to consistent income without all the chaos and noise. So get ready to increase your business growth, connect with your ideal clients, and find ease in both business and in life. It's time to turn your frustrations into inspiration and your chaos into clarity. So go ahead and grab your coffee, a pen and paper, and let's dive into the journey of building your dream service-based business together. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay, everyone, welcome back to the Chaos to Clarity podcast. My name is Maggie. I am your business bestie and your Chaos to Clarity coach. Today, I have Adrienne Smith here with me. She is a fellow yogi. She's also a studio owner, and I'm so excited for you guys to meet her and just to listen to everything she has to offer. So, Adrienne, why don't you go ahead and tell us who you are, a little bit about you, and how long you've been in business?
Sure. I am Adrienne Smith, and I am a yoga studio owner here in Santa Barbara, California, is where I live. I have been in business here for almost 12 years. And prior to that, I owned a studio outside of Chicago in the suburbs so all in all, it's been 15 plus years of studio ownership and being in a entrepreneurial world.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I love that. And I think we met at a yoga teacher training somewhere along the lines.
Yeah, I definitely Debbie Williamson,
Yep.
something
Yeah.
there. I'm not
Yep.
sure when or
Yeah.
where.
I don't remember if it was in Sheboygan Falls or it might have been at a yoga retreat as well. So just
Yeah.
so cool to be connected. And that was probably easily 10 years ago, I
Oh,
think.
easily 10 years ago. Yeah, for
Which
sure.
is it's so crazy to like look back at, and I've owned businesses for the past 15 years as well, right? So just to watch the growth over the last decade has been so crazy, just to know like, wow, there are people that I'm reconnecting with here on the podcast that I've known for the past 10 years, and it's like, wow, we have all lived so much life. It has been just
Oh, I know.
so amazing, right? To reconnect and just understand and just see how people are doing and what they're doing in their businesses. So let's get right into it. What is something challenging that you have overcome in your business? And that could be, anything over the past 15 years, which I know is a lot, right? Like there's a lot of
Mhm.
things to choose from. But if something stands out a little bit more than anything else, just tell us what that thing was and how you kind of navigated it and worked through it.
Yeah, I think the recency effect is in place for me at the moment, just of like what's been the most current
Yeah.
of things that I've navigated. Because I've navigated everything from being an absentee owner to having a child, taking leave, pulling other people in, and taking the role of owner in a way on. But most recently, I last summer I rode across the Pacific Ocean. And so I was on a leave of absence, not able at all to be reached. So there's going on a vacation where you can technically be reached, but I'm unreachable. So you guys got to figure it out.
Right.
And that happening, I was gone in total out of my business for 2 months, and 2 whole months where everyone else got to run the show. And I had to surrender to how that was going to look, even though I did all of the preparation to get to the point where it's like I can leave and everything's going to be taken care of. I also had to give up some things like exactly how it was going to get handled and what the
Mm-hmm.
conversation was going to be, like you were mentioning, like even having a podcast script or a script for having like someone's working at a restaurant and there's a way to greet customers, or we do it here where it's like when someone new comes in, here's what you say.
Mm-hmm.
And giving people the freedom that I hired, like having a team to say, like, this is how I want it to go. And if looking at the whole picture is the most important thing is we're offering you a class.
Mm-hmm.
So if some people over the course of time, they don't pay, or we miss some, people skip the check, in other words.
Right.
I'm like, it's okay. I'm gonna have to let go of like being on the horn about that moment by moment or week by week or however we normally do it. And so that's what I would say is like the most challenging. And the way that kind of navigating it looking back is I would go back and do things very differently because
Mm-hmm.
I decided about a month before I left to completely change my POS system. So I changed from the back end system of
Yep.
using MindBody, which a lot of people are familiar with, to a different one.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a disaster. It was a disaster because it brought a whole nother level of stress on
Mm-hmm.
top of also like navigating the change of me being gone. And I had to let go
Right.
and just let it run its course. Again, going back to the number one thing that was most important was that as long as people get to know, like get to come in here and take yoga classes, we good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. What a mindset, right? Like what a mindset shift you had to make, right? Of like being there in it every day and then knowing that you're going to take this unreachable leave of absence, right? Like how did you navigate how did you navigate the mindset around that?
Um, at the beginning, before I left, it was I mean, I don't have a choice.
Right.
This is, this I have to figure out how we're gonna make this work. And so the mindset of it was it's just gonna be how it is. And then whatever I come back to, it's gonna be great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to create like some, catastrophized situation.
Right.
And even after I came back and had to kind of clean up some of the mess, which, just happens is like this person didn't pay and I'm the only one that knows how to remedy this situation is, um, just kind of rewinding. And I learned this thing one of the things that we did as a team when we we were training was after every training session, we had, a post-mortem, I guess, or like a recon of how
Yep.
things went. And so we asked three questions: what worked well, what
Mm-hmm.
didn't work, and what needs to change.
Yeah.
In other words, there's like everything here, these are the things that went great. And then these are the things that didn't go great. And this is what we want to do to like make them better. And so at the end of it all, after I went through the emotional aggravation of it all, because I want to be clear that that definitely happened. I wasn't just like, everything is roses. Because I think it's really important as, especially yoga teachers and yoga
Mm-hmm.
studio owners and just being in that mindfulness space.
Yep.
Sometimes there's this stigma that gets held over us that like we can just handle it all and just move like, slide through life. And I'm like, oh,
Right.
I'm sliding, but inside I'm raging
Yeah.
and I'm taking the time for that. And so
Yeah.
that, on the both side of it is like handling the emotions, allowing space for them, making sure to kind of stay in that work of growth and realizing, there were things that worked. Let's celebrate those.
Right.
And then let's see what didn't. It's okay, great. Okay, that was a miss. That was my mistake. Next time, if I want to leave, even for a week or a weekend, I have to make sure that that piece gets covered. Just as
Right.
simple as like I walked in my door this morning after I taught this morning at a Karma Crew person and I was typing the code in and the door opened on its own. I was like, oh, dang,
Uh-huh.
they didn't lock the door. And so
Uh-huh.
the question is okay, the door wasn't locked. That's what the reality is.
Yep. Yep.
Did you didn't know the door? So it's communication is like you didn't know the door wasn't locked. Did you check that the door wasn't locked? What are the processes that we have to then put into place that I just do naturally and I don't
Mm-hmm.
realize others don't do?
Right.
So then it's like make sure you push on the door.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know how to lock the door? Here's how you do, just in case you forgot. And then make sure you just push on the door to just check.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
And like
And I
it's all
think,
good because like nothing got stolen, you
right.
know.
Right. Well, and I think what you bring up is it's such a good reminder, such a good point, right? Like, because everything you do, your emotions are going to get involved, right? So when you have to literally remove yourself and quite literally remove your emotions, right? You can stay raged You can stay raged, but that's going to take up so much energy, right? Like wasting that energy on rage that doesn't have to be rage, right? Like stepping away from that, feeling the feelings 100%, because if you don't and you try and shove them down, it's just going to get worse. And then you're going to build this whole other narrative in your mind of like, oh, of course, Susie Q is doing this and blah, blah, blah. They're ruining this, right? Instead, right? Oh, damn, the door wasn't locked. Okay. All right. What do we need to do? Thankfully, nothing got stolen. Great. I'm going to check in with that person and say, hey, did you know the door was unlocked? If you didn't, no big deal, but we got to make sure it's locked. So here's how, right? Like, and I think as a business owner, knowing that you can feel the feelings, but also have logic, right? To move through, like, and not stay stuck in that, oh my God, people are ruining my business, or so-and-so didn't lock the door again, right? And I know, like, I definitely have felt that in my prior businesses, right? And when I learned that shift of like, okay, maybe this person just didn't know how to do that thing, I'm just going to ask and say, hey, do you know how to do this? Or this happened. Do you want to tell me about it? Right? Like, and it's similar with my 5-year-old, right?
Oh, so much. You know what? There's a great example of that. There's a really good book. It's called Good Inside by Becky Kennedy. And one of the things in that world that she describes, I'm not going to get this exactly right, but she talks about like if a kid, like they knocked over a lamp while they were playing hard. And a lot of times the kid didn't want to knock over the lamp. They wished actually that didn't happen.
Right.
So if we can rewind ourselves and be like, I'm going to go to the place of that person, they actually didn't want that to happen.
Right.
But it did. So like, let me address that. It's like, you kind of didn't want that to happen, huh? You wish you could go back and not have that happen. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, I totally get it. And like, let's just make sure going forward, we just got to like, that's why we don't run in the house.
Yep.
That's why we push on the door after. And it's because I think that's the thing is like, we all are doing the best that we can at any moment. And for some reason, I don't know if you're in this world, but I feel like it's so much easier to do that with a 5-year-old than to do that with adults.
Oh, yeah.
I immediately go to like, you are an idiot in my head.
Yes.
Okay, let's backtrack. Be kind, generous.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I totally agree. Right. And a lot of the things that I practice with my kids, I also practice with adults, because you're right. We're all doing the best that we can. And in that moment, right? Like if things happen, even if I have a disagreement with my husband, right? Which, whatever, he didn't choose dinner that night, whatever. And I'm upset, like to backtrack and say, okay, I'm frustrated that you're not choosing dinner. How can we remedy this? Right? Do you know what you want for dinner? If not, then let's make a plan to figure this out, and I think as women, right, as moms, we have so much that we're constantly thinking about, constantly doing, constantly like, right, like I know my mind is in a million different places all at the same time, but to be able to backtrack and say, okay, here are the things that are frustrating me, here are the things that I'm stuck on, how can I rework some of that? How can I go about it and either get support or figure out, the best way to move through this? So I think, yeah. And I think that's really important to remember as a business owner as well, right? Because your business is essentially another baby, right? Your business is learning as you are learning, as you are growing. So, as you're coming up against these challenging things, right? Like, and for you leaving for 2 months and being unreachable, right? Knowing that you were going to have to surrender all of the things, right? I don't know that I could step away for 2 months and be like, okay, is it going to run? Is it going to still be standing when I come back, right? But also,
well, and the thing is though, is I think we all can, like you can. And it's a matter of sometimes life will force its hand that makes that happen. And we think like, oh, well, if, no one wants to get like a terminal illness diagnosis, but like in that case, then you got to figure it out. But it's like, why not, just to bring up like the women and mom piece, is why do we not say, I'm going to do that before things get bad. I'm I'm going to take a weekend away for myself, or I'm going to take, whatever a day. Mondays is like usually my catch up day where
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of reintegrate in life because I've been momming for 2 straight days.
Yep.
And that's work too. And we, being working mothers, it's like I'm working real hard for, how many hours a day. And then I'm parenting real hard, trying to be as present as possible. And then it's like, well, what about me?
Right.
What about my rest? What about my health? What about my reconnection with myself? It's like we don't get the time to dream when we're playing Barbies with our kids. Like
Right.
we want to be present for that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's so important to bring that up as well, right? To know that number one, it's okay to take a break for you, right? In order to like be a whole person, right? To find something that or time that really allows you as the business owner, as the mom, as the woman to just sit down and relax and just breathe out, right? Whether that's a yoga class, an entire day to yourself, an entire weekend, I don't know, right? Like that's something that for me personally, I've been trying to work more of that mindful space into my schedule daily, where it's like, okay, I know that every Monday through Thursday, I have an hour at a certain time for me to just do anything. If I want to turn on the TV, if I want to go for a walk, if I want to go to a yoga class, right? Like whatever that looks like, I have that hour to do whatever I want. And then it's time to focus. Or usually it's right before I go pick up the kids. I take that hour before I pick
Mm.
up the kids just to reconnect to me. And I try to take that on the weekends too, right? When everything is crazy at the house, sometimes I'm like, you know what? I need a minute to myself, right? And I need a few minutes to go outside and just reconnect to me so that I can be present, right? And taking those moments of like peace for myself reminds me that, like, okay, we're all doing our best. We're all giving it a try. And sometimes we all just need a little break, right?
Well,
That
yeah, it is that. I
was
mean, kids need it too. You're just like, I need some space,
yeah.
but it usually shows up as like a temper tantrum.
Yeah.
But that's really like the underneath the surface is like I'm like inside of myself like fighting, and like
Yeah.
they actually just need to like be alone,
Yep.
or or whatever it is. The same thing is happening for us, but it's just taking that time to check in.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And I know for us, it usually resolves itself when that's happening and I say, oh, let's go outside. Let's take the
Mhm.
four walls away and let's go outside. We can run, we can jump, we can do whatever we want. Let's do that, right? And that almost instantly puts everyone in a better mood, right? Like the
Mhm.
power of getting outside is it will never not astonish me how much that can shift a temper tantrum, right? And my 5-year-old, she is she's a strong one, right? She is very stubborn and I know that will serve her well, but man, it tests my boundaries every single day, right? So I know that by me being able to show up in a way that's like, I know you're raging inside. Okay, mommy's kind of raging too. So what do you think we can do? Right. And the answer is almost always, can I just go outside? Yup, let's go.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's so powerful, right? As moms, as entrepreneurs, to know that when you get into that kind of circle of like, oh my gosh, here's all this stuff coming down the pipeline, and there's all these things smashing at me, and I don't know what to do, right? To like literally get up and do something that will move the stagnant energy, right? So that you can refocus and come back to what it is you need to do.
Mhm.
So how do you think when you left for those 2 months, how do you feel like that affected your business? Like what changes did you see from when you left to like when you came back, right? Like in yourself, in others? Did you like, I guess, find more empowerment on like both sides?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it wasn't an immediate thing. It was coming back to work and realizing, I'll just say it straight up, was what I liked and what I didn't like. And what I liked to do and what I didn't like to do. And I, when I was in the middle of the ocean, I was like 28 days in, and I had a kind of breakthrough moment where I just declared to myself and my team, and I said, I cannot go back and live my life the same way. I was like, I was looking for something while I was out there to
Mm-hmm.
happen to me. And what I didn't realize was something was happening in me, and like that transcending experience while I was there. And so I came back thinking like, boom, it's going to be this immediate change. Cause that's how I roll. I'm just like, let's get into action. I'm not going to hesitate. These strong suits suit me well, decisive and hardworking and endless amounts of energy, and just go get it. And I watched myself come back and be pretty agitated, to be honest. Is not
Yeah.
agitated because I was by myself with my team for like four of us for 2 months, but rather realizing that there was so many things in life that I was like, I don't like this. I don't like having these kinds of conversations. I don't like that I am still working on this part of my business. Like, I don't want to handle emails.
Mm-hmm.
And as we know, like the emails have to get handled. Someone has to wash the floor. There has to be all those things. And then thinking is, people have done this before me. Like, I'm not the first one to run a business and leave it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then and even just the ability to have, as a teacher, several classes a day, that happens on a daily basis. So on every day, I'm not here all the time. I'm not teaching all the classes. I've already having to, like, the ability to acknowledge myself that I've already done some of this work. I've
Mm-hmm.
already put into the practices and the processes with my staff and team, and hey, this is how we handle this. But then realizing like, oh wait, there's yet another thing that I need for people to handle. And so what I started to do was I made a list, the specific list of every single thing that I do for my business. Or not everything that I do, but everything that has to get done. Every
Yeah.
single thing.
Yep.
And then I went through it and I put it in boxes. I put it in boxes of things that I absolutely don't want to do,
Mm-hmm.
things that I love to do, and then also tying around where I'm good at things. So, like, a lot of times people will say, oh my gosh, but you're a great teacher and I don't see you on the schedule as much. And I'm like, yeah, because I do like teaching, but I realize that that's almost this space of my expertise that I'm going to keep getting that affirmation from others. Like, you're really good at it. Keep doing it. You're really good at it. Keep doing it. But I'm not feeling myself growing there. I'm not on my
Mm-hmm.
growth edge.
Right.
And so I just started to put those things in buckets. And then I realized that I am spending so much time in the weeds that I am not getting a chance to network outside and, like, even, have these kinds of conversations. Because if I'm
Mm-hmm.
teaching every single class, then I have that hour is taken with this. If I
Yep.
say yes to this, I say no to this. And so it was making, what do I want to say yes to more of? What do I want to say no to more of? And then I started to create positions around those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I just bucketed things together. And it took a couple of months. So it was a little process that took a couple of months of figuring out, okay, well, I need someone. Number one was I reached out to my team and I said, I need someone that can do just like a few hours of work, maybe like 5 to 10 hours of work a week.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone comes to mind, I'm just planting the seed. And then
Yep.
someone reached out to me of my team and they were like, actually, I'm looking for some things to fill in the gaps. I was like, great. And I'm like, this is the job description. These are the tasks, these are responsibilities. And
Yep.
then some of them were ones that they were great at and others not so great at. And then we also discovered there was another talent that they had that they didn't share with me. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
you're amazing at graphics. We need to put that in your bucket. And you like to do it. And so it was like creating that also for them. It wasn't just me doing, like, I can do these things and I've done them forever, like just through practice, and
Yep.
you got to kind of wear all the hats at times. And then realizing that there's someone else that's got a talent in that area, and then I don't have to do that anymore. And that'll free me up. Oh my God, hallelujah. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was that process, and it's continuing to get refined, and then things change. And like one of my staff is that person that I had brought on is pregnant, and she's going to be, going on her own leave in a couple months. And so it's like, okay, now how do I take that, which I did for myself? How do we do that for you? How do we
Mm-hmm.
rewind that tape and be like, okay, now you have to train someone on all the things that you are doing. What are all the things you do?
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's
So that it's
so
replicable.
right. And it's so empowering, right? As you grow your business and you grow your team, right? To know that like the love and dedication that you have for your business that others have as well, right? Like, and kind of creating that like village of people who are supporting your business, right? Like, because it definitely takes a village to raise a child, right? Like there is no doubt about that. It also takes a village to grow your business. And I think that as you grow in your business, knowing that like, okay, I can do the graphics, I can do this, I can do that, but I don't love it. Right. And chances are there's probably someone who loves it equally as much as you love your business to be able to replicate your voice, that brand, that power you feel behind that, and to get it done quicker. And chances are probably cheaper, right? Than what you value your time as,
Right.
right? Because I think I know that was one of the hardest parts for me was delegating tasks out because like I know I can do it all. I know how to. I don't necessarily like to, but I know how. And, similar to like, okay, I've got to let this go of someone else can do it better. I might not like how they do it, but they can do it better and faster than what I can, right? And I have to
Mm-hmm.
surrender into that knowing that they are going to like take it on and run with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
And
what
trusting
is
that process. You use that word surrender.
oh
So
my
that's like
gosh,
a big
yes.
part.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
trusting the process, surrendering to it. That is, like I often think about like a hot yoga class or even even one of Debbie's classes where it's like in the middle and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do one more chaturanga." And then, right? And then there's that thought of like, but what if I just tried? What if I just tried, right? What if I see what happens, right? And like lo and behold, maybe that's the last one. Who knows? Whatever. But I think leaning into that discomfort, trying, and then just seeing what comes out on the other end is so powerful. It's such a powerful shift that you are able to make within yourself and your business.
Yeah. And I think it's important that it seems like what we're talking about is like a concept. It's like, oh, just, see what's possible, trust the process, surrender to what is. And when you're in the fire of that, going from how you were to what you're wanting, that place sucks balls.
Oh my
It
God, yes.
sucks.
Yes.
It feels terrible. It feels so unsteady and unrocky or rocky. And like there's just waves coming emotionally in all directions, and you never feel like you're going to find solid footing again. But if we rewind ourselves back, we've been doing that in other ways, and we just have to remind ourselves that it always works. And so that trust piece, we don't know what that other side is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that how whatever it is going on right now, and I'm doing that in several arenas at the moment. It's like I don't like it. And I
Mm-hmm.
want it to be very clear that it's not like sitting down and then meditating through it and seeing like on the outside, it's like it looks so stoic. And I'm like, it's not, it's so that's the like people talk about go, do the work. It's like that's the work. It's sitting
Mm-hmm.
in that messy middle spot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we don't give enough credit to that transitional period of
Right.
realizing like, yeah, trust, keep trusting, stay in the light, stay open. And it's like, no, when it's a mess, when you're feeling really rocky, that's when you have to like have those mantras or have those tools or get back into your body.
Yep.
And it's still messy.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Mm-hmm.
grounded, still messy.
Yep.
I'm breathing, I can feel my body. And I also feel really unstable.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I think it's like that dance that they can coexist.
Yeah. And I think that's really powerful too, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other, right? It can be both. It can be steady and in the fire, right? Like it can be both. And I think you're right. There's a lot of shifts you can make in the moment to be able to sit in that messy middle and just know that, yes, I am doing everything in my power to move through this as I can. And I am making decisions based on what I need right now. I think that's really important to remember as well, right? Because the messy middle is like, it it's one of those things where you're like, I don't know which way is up, I don't know which way is down, and then all of a sudden you're like, this could be really easy and I could just hang it all up and not do any of this, right?
Or go back to the old way.
Or go back
You're
to
like,
the
I
old
did it.
way.
I
Right.
kept doing it. But like, I think part of us, like, I feel like what my mission has been internally and like externally is like, that place is dead. There's a dead energy in that. Similar to just, what I was sharing about people saying like, oh, you're great at teaching yoga classes, like keep doing that. So sometimes people also hold us there because it helps them stay there.
Right. Yep.
And I'm like, that's not what I'm up to. I that to me feels like someone's like causing my internal death.
Right. Yeah, no, and I totally relate to that. Because when I closed the yoga studio in 2020, so many people, right? Like, I mean, obviously all of the crazy pandemic stuff was happening at that point in time, right? And I had this thought when I was in Bali just before I came home. I was leading a yoga retreat. Everything was like shut down and I was like, this is like these next few months are going to be a turning point for me, right? Like, and the studio. And like, I knew that the studio wasn't like a forever job or a forever business for me. I knew that. And when I came home, I was like, I think this is the beginning of the end of my studio, right? Like, I want to be home with, at that time, we just had one kid. So I want to be home more often with her. I want to be home with my husband more often. Is it possible for me to bring in other yoga teachers? And, at that time I had yoga teachers, but I also knew like, I didn't know what I didn't know about whatever was going on with the pandemic, right? I had no clue how long that stuff was going to,
Totally.
right, stay in place. And I was like, this is super stressful. What would I ideally want to be doing, right? And like kind of sat in meditation and just like, okay, if I could burn it all down, what do I want to do? Do I still want to stay teaching yoga? Do I still want the studio? Do I see that in my future? And like almost immediately it was like nope, the studio is not there and I'm doing something else, right? Like something to empower other women to grow their businesses, right? I knew coaching was kind of sort of in there and like, just a bunch of moving pieces. And I'm like, okay, so I don't necessarily see a future there. So I started asking teachers, do you want to teach more? And I was very firmly met with a no. And I'm like, okay, well, then I'm done owning the studio. I'm done. I'll teach privately. That's fine. That's great. But this is not for me. I am growing. I am leveling up, and this is not part of where I am now. And so many people were like, oh, but you can't close this.
Yeah, totally.
You can't. And I'm like,
yeah,
but I
but I can.
But I can, and I'm going to. And this is what I'm doing now. Right. And I think so
we're all living our own lives.
Right. Yeah. And when you're in that growth and when you know that your next step is going to be met with some of those like, oh, but you're so great at this. Why are you stopping? Blah, blah, blah. Right. Like some of that noise to keep you held back. In order to push through some of that, you have to, I guess, let some of that, right, set some of those emotions down and say, not right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was definitely a powerful for me, right? Powerful growth for me to say, no, I am done. I can't I can't teach all the classes because that's what it wound up being. It wound up being me teaching all the classes. I'm like, I can't. I can't.
Well, and part of
And
it's like you were and you were doing it, right? But
right.
then there's the I don't want to.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
think it's very big distinction between I can't keep doing this
Right.
and I don't want to keep doing this
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because we don't often, like even in that beginning of our conversation about where do we hold the space for ourselves to dream and to explore what we do want to be doing
Mm-hmm.
is kind of if we stay in the mayhem of day-to-day life, we realize you're like, oh, I could do this. I could keep doing this. I could do this, but I don't want to. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want it to keep going this way.
Right.
And then what do I want? And that's a real hard question, I think, for most people to answer is we don't give ourselves the chance and we hold ourselves so small because then when we say like, oh, I would love to, have a house in Hawaii, but we are like, oh, but no, I can't do that. That's not me. That's like, da, 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 da. We immediately
Mm-hmm.
like don't even let ourselves dream and brainstorm.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think that is, that's a powerful message for anyone who's listening is that like if you let yourself dream and brainstorm and have some of those crazy ideas, right? Like don't discount those ideas just because they seem crazy and far off, right? I think as women that happens a lot more than we realize, right? Where we're so focused on everyone else but ourselves that pretty soon we're like, yeah, but what do I want? What's going to make me happy? And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the stuff that I do with my coaching clients is we work on a lot of those core values of, people come in and they say, oh, my family is my why, which is great, but core values, passion, like that stuff is personal. It's selfish, right? It gets labeled as selfish because like, well, why should I feel joy if others aren't feeling joy? Or why should I feel creative when they don't? Right. But like when you fill your own cup, it's so much easier to help lift up others. Right. So, like you said, letting go of those tasks and things that you don't like to do, the emails, the social media, the this, that ultimately is going to make you happier, which is going to make you a better leader, which is going to make other people around you say, oh, wow, this is so easy
Well,
to
which
work
which
with.
also makes new opportunities show up
Yes.
because we
Yes.
finally freed ourselves up energetically so that the little pings can start to come in. And
Yes.
that's been my biggest shift for the last 7, 8 months is that space that then gets held for the divine.
Right. Yeah. 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 For the what if, the what else is coming my way, right? The excitement of
Mm-hmm.
like, I've got this open space. Like, what can I dream? What can I bring in? I think that is a really powerful space to be in.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So, what is one piece of advice that you would tell your younger self?
I would say it's all going to work out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's all going to work out. And then the with that is why that's important is we can spend so much time, and I have, where whatever it is that we're doing, we're not fully being there. For an example, is I'll go on a walk and I intentionally will be like, I need to decompress and just take a walk, be out in nature. I have this little like 2 mile loop that I do for my house. And I catch myself being in mode around like thinking about my upcoming teacher training or thinking about my schedule or like rewinding a conversation I had with my husband and then I'm in this world of like just thinking, spiraling back up, back in, back up, back in. And I'm like, wait, right now you're on a walk. Be
Mm-hmm.
on the walk.
Yeah.
So that's like, meditation practice is just to be in the observation of like looking around. How do I feel? Noticing I'm thinking. Oh wow, I'm planning. Stop planning. This isn't the time for planning. So like putting planning on your calendar.
Mm-hmm.
So that when you do go for the yoga class or the walk or the meditation or the space away, it's not going because that's time for planning.
Mm-hmm.
And then because I think that why I bring that up is that if we don't trust that it's all going to work out, then we fill up any little free time of space, even when we're washing the dishes, with sorting out the next thing. Like, again, us moms can hold all the things. We're great at it.
Right.
We're freaking champion superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
So, so glad that I'm a woman that's able to hold it all. And then also witness myself. Oh my gosh, while I'm washing the dishes, I didn't even pay attention to any of the dishes I was washing because I'm sorting out like how the rest of the day is going to go.
Right.
And it's like, that's like a very, like, think Buddhist practice where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to washing your dishes, pay attention to putting your shoes on, where you put
Mm-hmm.
your shoes. And I think the name of your podcast, From Chaos to Clarity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that's chaos. Like, that is a chaotic energy. And
Right.
so how to get clear is to just keep checking, like, am I creating clear space? Because it won't all work out if we're filling all the space.
Right. Yep.
It'll work out, but it'll be like this, like, kind of clamoring, like, ugh, I've got to work so hard for it to work out. And I've got to
Right.
handle it all myself instead
Mm-hmm.
of I can trust this person. And then, oh, wow, if I'm going to hire someone, why don't I put an hour on my calendar for what that's going to look like
Yep.
during our interview? So the upfront time is going to free you up later. I like to
Mm-hmm.
say, the structures create freedom. And me as a
Mm-hmm.
person that loves a lot of freedom, when someone tries to impose a structure on me, I'm like, oh, no, you don't. But
Right.
realizing that, if you're coaching someone, there's got to be some structure. There's
Yes.
got to be some discipline of them. Hey, follow, like, we've got to meet however often it is, just the way that your
Mm-hmm.
podcast has a structure.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then that structure, because you shared with me, you're like, this is planned for, December or whatever. And I'm like, oh, dang, girl, like, you got a structure
Right. Yes. Yep.
so that it can be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Right.
and then how it all pans out, it pans out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's important to set up the structure, the foundation, right? And allow things to be built on that, right? Like, I don't have a like super rigid, like for podcast, for example, it's not super rigid, but I do have a structure, right? Like, I've laid the foundations, and there's things that I've done in preparation to be where I'm at with this podcast. And for for it to have grown the way it has grown, it's so exciting to me that it was a thought a couple years ago. And right, not a lot of people, a bunch of people told me, don't do it, it's a waste of time, it's a lot of work, da, 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 right, all this stuff. And earlier this year, I had been reconsidering a podcast. My sister gave me some podcasting equipment for Christmas, and I was like, okay, now's the time. I said something in a networking meeting, and I had 20 people asking me to be on the podcast without really knowing what it was about, right? Other than that, the name was Chaos to Clarity, and it was helping women move from chaos into clarity. That was all they knew about it. So, right, for people to take the chance, but also for me to know that, okay, I have the thoughts, the downloads, the foundations. I knew the questions that I wanted to ask, right? Like, I had as much foundation as I needed in order for it to grow. And like, that was so exciting to see that, right? To know that, like, I kind of sat back and opened myself up to the possibility, and I leaned into the trust that people would sign up, because that was one thing that a thought was given to me, that no one is going to sign up to be interviewed. And I was like, but what if they do?
Yeah, I know.
What if they do? And they did. Like, I have, well, by the time this airs, it'll be December. So,
Yeah, it's sort of like that question of
yeah,
like, what if it works out?
right.
Oh man,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
crazy to think that that actually could be possible versus the opposite of like, oh, I'm gonna put on this thing and it's not gonna work out. And it's like, well, what
Mm-hmm.
if it works out?
Right.
Can you
Yes.
imagine that world?
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, I have one question left. And my last question of the day is, if you were a kitchen utensil, what would you be and why?
Oh, hmm. The first thought that comes up for some reason, maybe it's again that recency effect, is the whisk.
Huh? Love it.
Um, because there's this, I'm thinking about the most recent time that I made pancakes, is it gives you the ability to see how thick something is and then how much more water needs to get added. And then when
Mhm.
you've had too much, it's like how quickly it goes through the little silver pieces.
Yep.
And, metaphorically, I think it happens so quickly. It happens so quickly making pancakes, like not enough water, not enough water. And then it's like, oh, too much water. And you're able to see that through that tool. If I
Mm-hmm.
was to use a spoon, it wouldn't be as clear. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I think I just like making pancakes with the whisk.
I love that. That's so awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It has been so great to reconnect, to chat. I'm so excited for everything you are doing. I'm excited for all the growth and all that. So tell everyone how they can connect with you and yeah, where can they find you?
Sure. So, a couple places. If you're on the Instagram, my Instagram is the Adrienne Smith. And there's a lot of Smiths out there, as you can imagine. And I have a yoga studio in Santa Barbara. It's called Power of Your Ohm. So if you're ever out on the West Coast, come. It's a lively, vibrant community where you will have a great time. And the last place is the work that I'm stepping into more is wellness programs, retreats, and speaking. And so that website is alignedlivingnow.com. And you can see what that's all about and how to connect with me to have any further conversations.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I can't wait for everyone to hear this episode.
Me too. Thanks, Maggie.
Wow, what a great interview. Thank you so much for showing up here on the Chaos to Clarity podcast. Again, my name is Maggie. I'm so excited to connect with you. You can find all of the information, all of the links below in the show notes for today's interview. And I hope you have the best day ever.